Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Así el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin ti naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I am your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is being performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants here in Puerto Vallarta. Those are the Lapa Lapa, the El Dorado restaurant, and at night, the El Dorado transforms into the ever-so-romantic Vista Grill with those dramatic views of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors. Of course, at Lapa Lapa, you can enjoy that same view of the Los Muertos Pier all day long for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week, I have a very special guest. His name is Michael Keller of Guardian Insurance Mexico. But before we get to that conversation, let's see what's happening in Puerto Vallarta this week, December 6th, 2017. We are halfway through the pilgrimage to our Church of Our Lady de Guadalupe, and a couple of you have asked me about what happened here. I mean, how is it that the Virgin Mary got the name Guadalupe, right? How did that happen? Is it, what's with the transformation? So anyway, fair enough, here it goes. It has a lot to do with the Aztec language, and the Aztec language is a beautiful, beautiful language. I have a buddy named Netzahualcoyo. We call him Netza for short. Basically, I know him as Jose. And but beautiful, beautiful sounding kind of words that kind of roll off of the tongue of many people, not me, but many others. Anyhow, when Juan Diego came to Bishop Zumarraga to tell him that he had seen and spoken with the Virgin Mary, he explained that she had spoken to him in his native Indian tongue. And when he asked her who she was and what her name was, he explained to the bishop that she said that her name was Quetzalcoatl. And in that Aztec language, which as a matter of fact can be, the word actually can be translated into one that crushes the serpent, one who crushes the serpent. And that may be referring to the feathered Aztec serpent Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl, was the patron god of the Aztec priesthood. And those are the priests that are those guys that love to cut the hearts out of their human sacrifices. Remember those guys? So that might make a little bit of sense that she would introduce herself to Juan Diego as the serpent crusher, right? Anyway, when the bishop heard Juan Diego pronounce the word, he assumed that was the more familiar Guadalupe, not Quacalupe or Quetzalcoatlupe or whatever it was. Guadalupe is a famous, or was a famous Spanish convent. So anyway, Guadalupe, the word stuck, and that's just actually one of the many interpretations of the particular event. There have been a lot of interpretations, you guys, but that's how the Virgin Mary became the Lady of Guadalupe. And by the way, if you haven't done so yet, I tell the whole story of Juan Diego in last week's podcast. So if you missed it, go ahead and check it out. and you'll understand what the heck I'm talking about right now, okay? All right. I've been keeping my eye on the goings-on at Parque de los Azulejos. Remember, we talked with Natasha Moraga over there and her plans and to tile Lazaro Cardenas Park. And everything's looking really good so far. They're moving right along. I have some photos that Nancy Page, my buddy, sent me. And I'll put them in my show notes so you can take a look at the progress that they're making. Now, if you go to their website, if you go to Tile Park BV and go to their website, you can get a schedule of the workshops that they're having in the park. And those workshops are really a great way to make your mark in the park. They for just over $100 US, you can be a part of one of these workshops and learn how to do this mosaic tiling. It's a skill that you can take home with you and put it to use long after you come back from paradise. And you'll have the opportunity to learn from Natasha Moraga herself and to make your mark, because you'll be putting tiles in the park. You'll be actually placing them in the park. So I have links to all the upcoming events and workshops in the show notes for this episode. And you can also find Natasha at the booth over at the Farmers Market on Saturday mornings over at Olas Altas Market. So go ahead and see her and buy a personalized tile while you're at it for the holidays, right? And you're going to be right there in person, or you can do it online. You just go to www.tileparkpv.com and make your mark in the park. I just can't wait till I get there in January and just see what kind of progress they're making and see it in person. But take a look at my pictures. You'll see where they're going. It's going to be beautiful, you guys. And you can all help out and make your mark. All right, there's just so much to talk about, but we need to get to our guest and to our topic, Michael Keller and insurance in Mexico. So back in June, I had an interview with Pamela Thompson-Webb of Healthcare Resources PV. And I suggest that you, if you haven't heard that episode, download it and listen to it. It's one of my most downloaded episodes. She talks about a lot of things, and Pamela Thompson has her hands in a lot of things here in Puerto Vallarta when it comes to medical care and taking care of all the expats that live out here, looking out for them all. So we talked about the importance of getting travel insurance when you travel to Mexico. And it's really reasonable, as you're going to see when we get to Michael. But healthcare, especially emergency healthcare in Mexico, is not free, and it's not even reasonable, okay? It can be very, very expensive. Listen to this story from this July. I'm gonna cut this up a little bit because it's a little bit long, but I got this article from Fox 59 in Indiana, and it reads, Martinsville, Indiana. An American baby born premature in Mexico is being held hostage at a Cancun hospital, according to the grandparents trying to get him home. Michaela Smith and Larry Ralph Jr. planned a dream vacation to Mexico, but now the trip has turned into a nightmare. Our daughter is stuck in Cancun with our first grandchild, and we can't get him here, said Elaine Smith, Michaela's mother. Michaela was 28 weeks pregnant when she and Larry left for Mexico. Michaela's parents say that she checked with her doctor before moving forward with the plans that they'd already made to leave the country. She was told traveling up to 30 weeks would be fine, so she went ahead. They should have been home today, said Elaine, but Michaela went into labor Tuesday morning, giving birth to baby Beckham, born 12 weeks early. He weighed just 2 pounds and 8 ounces. Now we go back to Larry Ralph Sr., who says a baby born at 28 weeks in the United States has a 96 to 98% chance of survival that first year. He said that his son had been frantically working to get Michaela and his newborn baby out of Mexico. Shortly after his birth, her parents say the nightmare began. Literally, they're being held hostage down there, said Larry Sr. We just want to get him somewhere and get him stable. We need to get him in America. Michaela and Larry Sr. handed over $9,000 to the hospital for the first day of care, and then another $4,000 for various fees. Then they say hospital staff refused to release the baby to an air ambulance until they paid the bill in full. Larry went that whole evening without seeing the baby, said Larry's father, Larry Ralph Sr. They demanded pretty much that he pay another $4,000, and that got him access to go back and see the baby. The total kept changing, but was last pegged at $30,000 just 2 hours after they were told it would be $27,000. And even that doesn't include the money for the 4 grandparents spent for the air ambulance. The medevac was paid for to go to St. Peter's Hospital. That was around $18,000, said Larry Sr. Are you guys keeping track of all of this money? Are you listening to the pain that these people are going through because they didn't get traveler's insurance? Okay, here we go. But that plan for the $18,000 fell apart as well. The grandparents learned from their first medical flight company that no Florida hospital would take Beckham because of his mother's Hoosier Health-Wise insurance. I would never have thought that we'd have had a problem getting him in a hospital here, Elaine said. We'd have thought Florida would have been our best chance. So, once again, they think that their own insurance is going to handle that as well, right? Very, very interesting. So, they're getting it on both ends here, all right? All right, so they were on the phone with Congressman Trey Hollingsworth's office all day to find a hospital that'll take him since it's an emergency. And Hollingsworth's office issued a statement saying Indiana's 9th Congressional District Office has been working with the family throughout the day, seeking a solution to get this newborn home to the United States for necessary medical care. Representative Hollingsworth continues to assist and looks forward to greeting his new Hoosier, as soon as he is home and healthy. The family also reached out to Senator Donnelly's office on the weekend. His office got back with him on Thursday and told the family that they've reached out to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico. Meanwhile, the cost of Beckham's care in Mexico keeps climbing. All right. The family said that they didn't want to ask for money, but with nearly $30,000 spent out of pocket just on the hospital, they decided to start a GoFundMe and help bring Beckham home. I love you, Michaela, said Elaine as she spoke to her on the phone. We're going to get you and Larry and Beckham out of there. We will. We're going to do it. At last check, the medical jet has landed in Cancun, and they're working on getting the family in an ambulance and on a medical jet now. They hope the hospital will release him without incident, but worry that they'll continue asking for more money that they don't have. Once the medical jet leaves Cancun, it'll stop in Pensacola to go through customs, and then it'll head to Indianapolis. And if all goes well, they should be back in Indianapolis by 6 p.m. The new jet costs nearly $30,000 to bring Beckham all the way to Indiana, a cost that the family must pay up front. Okay, you heard it. That was a freaking nightmare. That is a freaking nightmare. Okay, there's some mistakes that these people made, but the biggest mistake they made was not getting traveler's insurance. These people, oh my God, this story, it just kills me. I don't know about you guys. Okay, so it ended up that the family put together that GoFundMe page to raise almost $60,000, and they did. They came almost, I think, to that amount. Now, there's dozens of articles like this. You can look them up, go online, Google it up. There's foreigners that travel to Mexico thinking that everything's cheap, even medical care. And then an emergency hits, like a medical emergency hits, and wow, their whole world is turned upside down, right? So I wanted to get this interview out to the casual vacationer where, people are heading to Puerto Vallarta in droves now. But I also want many of you people in Puerto Vallarta. I know that there's a lot of people there who winter for, several months there. You are snowbirds. You know who you are. And you guys need to know what kind of coverage that you should have while you're down here in the tropics away from home for so long. Now, I also have lots of listeners out there who are thinking about making a permanent move to Paradise, and they've been asking me questions as to what types of medical insurance that, well, if you're a homeowner or if you have a car or a business or, medical, of course, what kind of coverage can you get? What is available in Mexican insurance? So I thought that I would bring my friend Michael Keller of Guardian Insurance Mexico to tell us all what's available and what you should know about buying Mexican insurance policies. Michael is an American. He's from Chicago. He found his way here to Paradise. And he found a way to make a living on his own terms in Mexico. He developed a skill set and he employed it, and he's making a living at it, where many expats actually struggle to find meaningful and good-paying jobs, while they're out of the States and working in Mexico. So to me, it's just amazing that he was able to do that, and it's just amazing as some of the policies that are available to expats in Paradise. So let's go to Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and talk with Michael Keller of Guardian Insurance Mexico. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good, Barry. Thank you for having me.
I usually ask my guests to tell us their path to Puerto Vallarta, but currently you are in another part of Mexico. You got another path, it looks like. But I do know, I understand that you lived in Puerto Vallarta for a while. Tell us about your journey from the States to Mexico. You did live in Puerto Vallarta for some time, yes?
Yeah. My path to Mexico actually started in Puerto Vallarta. Basically, I'm from Chicago, and Chicago is the second largest home of Mexicans after Los Angeles. So I knew a lot of Mexicans up there when I was a kid, 15, 16, 17, working in a restaurant. I knew a lot of Mexicans. There was one who spoke really good English, and I became really good friends with him. And he ended up moving back down to Guadalajara, where he's from, in 2007. And we always just kept in touch. And I went away to college and everything and finished all that and got my degree. And I was on the market for a job fresh out of college. And I really didn't have any ambition to just become another cog in a corporate machine at a big, large company in Chicago or something like that. So I was looking for other things to do, and he invited me down to try to penetrate the expat population for his Mexican brokerage, and I was able to work with him. It was almost more of a apprenticeship. I spent a lot of time in Guadalajara, but we were based out of Puerto Vallarta at that time. That's kind of where I got my feet wet in the Mexican insurance business, because his mother owns a large brokerage in Guadalajara. Ended up after about a year with him, things weren't really working out because they were a Mexican brokerage for Mexican nationals. They weren't really equipped or ready to handle the foreign market. So I could see that my reputation was going down because of those things. So I changed companies to a different company that, although they were founded by foreigners, they were also Mexican operated. So I worked with them for close to a year and a half, and they were actually the company that they asked me to move from Puerto Vallarta to Playa del Carmen to open an office for them out here. And that's the reason I'm out in Playa del Carmen instead of Puerto Vallarta now. I've been out here for about a year and a half or so. And same thing with them. Basically, I started having the same problems. I wasn't getting a good service with the company. I could see my reputation was getting put on the line, so I decided to find some investors. And recently, as of June 1st, 2017, we have opened our own brokerage, which is Guardian Brokerage, or Guardian Insurance Mexico. And We specialize in the expat community for all of their insurance needs. We have an in-house claims department. We really care about the client and explaining their options to them and making sure that they understand everything fully before they make a payment. They're satisfied with everything. We help them through their claims. We provide English translation so they can read what they're getting and things like that. So that is my long story.
Wow, yeah, but that's a great story. So your clients, it sounds like they're expats, yes, mostly, or
Yeah, we only really target, we will help a Mexican if they come to us looking for insurance. Obviously, we won't turn them away. We'll help them as well. And obviously, having a company based out of Mexico, we have expats on staff, but also a lot of Mexicans that speak good English, so they can help the Mexican clients that we get. But yeah, 95% of our client base and all of our marketing and everything that we do is based for foreigners living or visiting Mexico.
Great. So you've got a niche now. You are helping. You saw that there was a need, and you're filling it. That's great. All right. So you say that you also cover people who are coming to visit Mexico. So let's say you're planning a short stay in Mexico. Let's say for a month, maybe 2 weeks. Let's say. What kind of coverage should a traveler from the U.S. or Canada get?
Yeah, basically for anything even up to 4 months, and really not more than 4 months, but especially for a couple weeks, a couple months, there's really good short-term travel medical insurance policies everywhere on the market, but we offer a few good ones. We offer one very good one per person for $30,000 in coverage for every 31 days. It's about $53 in premium.
Oh, that's great. That's an incredible rate. How do you do that?
Well, because a lot of companies will let us or let other agents or brokerages issue policies for 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, whatever. But these policies, to get that low price, we can only do them for 31 days at a time. If the client needs it for 2 months, 3 months, whatever, then we can issue consecutive policies so there's no lapse in coverage or anything like that. But one of the stipulations that we had to abide by in order to get these lower rates was that we can only issue them for 31 days at a time. And we have that company's called Atlas. They're AAA rated in Mexico. They're the second largest insurance provider in Mexico. The good thing about them compared to a lot of other travel insurance providers that people from the U.S. and Canada get is they're getting policies from companies in the U.S. or Canada, which means they don't have any operations based out of Mexico, which means a majority of those policies you have to pay up front for all of your expenses and wait until you get back to your home country to get reimbursed.
Right.
With these policies, after the first 24 hours in the hospital, they'll start paying direct to any facility in Mexico, so you don't have to pay anything up front unless it's something minor, obviously, that you didn't stay in the hospital for very long for. Then you pay up front and you get reimbursed, but our claims department helps with all of that anyway. And they have different levels. I mentioned that the $30,000 in coverage was $53. We can go as high as $150,000 in coverage per 31 days. Obviously, that one's a lot more expensive. That one's up around $215 or something, I think. But there's 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. So there are many different options. And it's very easy. Very little information is required. Name, date of birth, emergency contact info. We can get it issued. We can't have the policy start on the same day that we issue it. So as long as we issue it 24 hours in advance, that's really all the notice that we need.
Okay. Could you actually do that if you are in Mexico, or do you have to be in the States to do it?
No, we can do it. We can do it for the people before they leave or once they come down. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's talk about what kind of, do you have any like pre-existing condition limitations on that particular policy?
with these ones, with travel insurance ones, and not just with this company, I also work with a couple other companies. One of them is like $5 a day for $20,000 in coverage, but I can issue them for more than 31 days, and it's obviously more expensive. But even that company, there are very, very few short-term travel insurance policies that will include pre-existing conditions. Almost all of them that I know on the market just completely exclude them, and that's why basically anyone can get accepted.
I see.
except for the age limit. With the one that I'm talking about, Atlas, they have an age limit of 80. So you can get covered until you're 79, until you turn 80. So it is high, an age limit, and anyone can get accepted. If you have cancer, if you have HIV, if you have Parkinson's, anything, they just won't cover those things. But I mean, in Puerto Vallarta, if you get hit by one of those crazy buses or something, at least that's covered. You know?
Right. Yeah, because there are cobblestone streets in Puerto Vallarta. A lot of people fall down, break this and that. Yeah, so and that's not pre-existing. So you're covered if that something like that happens. So okay, good point. All right, let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, if you are going to be living in Puerto Vallarta, let's say, or just staying for a long time. When I say a long time, like 6 months or something like that, is there any kind of a supplemental coverage that someone should be getting? Let's say they're on Medicare or something like that in the States. Is there something that they should look for in an insurance coverage?
Yeah, well, they have a couple options. So for people staying 6 months, but not more than 6 months, we can issue those 31-day travel policies for up to 180 days consecutively. Most travel insurance companies won't let you go over 6 months in a 1 year period, because then they'll tell you, well, that person's out of their home country for too long. They need to get an annual private policy. They can't keep getting travel insurance with us. So in that case, we have to switch to another travel company for 6 months and then switch again, and it's a pain. So if it's less than 6 months and they have Medicare, or even Canadians who have their provincial coverage who are able to keep it because they're not in Mexico for too long, through a period of 1 year, we can still do the travel insurance, which is good, and we can combine it with an elective medical evacuation plan. And those plans give you the option where if you are suffering a medical emergency in Mexico, you can get flown back to the city of your choice in Canada or the US, and your Medicare or their provincial Canadian coverage can take over there and pick up a majority of the expenses. The only problem with those plans is that they're not policies, they're just plans. So they just arrange and pay for the air evacuation flight or whatever flight expenses that are associated with getting you back home, as well as some other services. But the point being, they don't provide any coverage for any medical expenses whatsoever. And you always need to be stabilized in Mexico and approved by a doctor before you can be evacuated back home. So for the people 6 months or less that have coverage like that back home, what I recommend is the Atlas travel policy that I told you about. That's only $50 per month per person for $30,000 in coverage. There's no deductible with those. So with that policy, you basically take care of your stabilization expenses in Mexico. So no deductible, you don't pay anything up front. $30,000 premium, or $30,000 sum insured. Obviously, stabilization expenses aren't going to exceed that, and you're also getting a very low premium combined with the medical evacuation plan to get you back home. And a lot of people like that option. But if it's more than 6 months, then that's a different story, and I can go into that as well if you like.
Let's talk about that. What if it is more than 6 months?
Yeah, so and besides not being able to issue the policies for more than 180 days, the travel policies, that is, there's some downfalls of short-term travel medical insurance versus the annual private insurance. And one of those is the age limit. With the short-term travel insurance, I had obviously said that the age limit is 80, meaning that once you hit 80, you just can't apply anymore. They won't even accept you. With annual private insurance, there's also an age limit. The highest one I know for that is age 76. The difference there, though, is that if you get into a plan for the annual private insurance before you hit that age, it's renewable for life, and they can't cancel you due to your age. So I always push people 5 months or more, 6 months or more out in Mexico towards that, because if they wait and they keep getting travel insurance, once they hit 80 and they're not eligible for that anymore, they're also unfortunately uneligible for any health insurance as well, because the age limit is 76, and because they didn't get in before, it's not renewable for life. So basically at 80, if they had done travel insurance, they have literally no other option whatsoever, and they can't get anything else. The second reason is also, to me, very important. Like we had pointed out earlier, the short-term travel insurance does not ever cover any pre-existing conditions. So for people that get policies that come down, whether they get one of my 31-day policies or they go with a company that issues it for longer than that, for up to the full 180 days, say they issue a policy for 180 days and come down in one trip and everything is fine, or they suffer some injury, whatever, that's covered by the first 180 days. They go back up to Canada, obviously the policy's been canceled, or the US, whatever, the policy's been canceled. So then the next time they come down, they get a second policy. Anything that had happened to them previously, what happened to them in Mexico, maybe something happened to them in the 3, 4, 5 months they were up in Canada in that year before they came back down to Mexico, that's not covered anymore. Because you're never renewing anything with short-term travel insurance. You're always purchasing new. With the annual private insurance, you're renewing. So once you get the policy, anything that happens after that is covered year after year. So especially people that are getting older, over 55, over 60, even if they're only down here 6 months, 7 months, and they're technically they're going to be paying for an annual policy that they're not using for 3, 4, 5 months while they're in the US or Canada. Because of that, because of the pre-existing conditions being covered year after year, a lot of people do choose that over the short-term travel insurance, even if they're not down here on a full-time basis. And obviously the people down here on a full-time basis, they want the annual renewable insurance anyway. But a lot of people that are down here 6 months or more per year, I first off, I always recommend the annual private insurance, and most of them end up getting it because they want to have any future pre-existing conditions covered. So
sure. How about costs for something like that? I guess that also depends on pre-existing, yes?
Well, the pre-existing conditions, they usually rarely affect age. Usually they'll either completely exclude you or they'll completely deny you if it's something really, really severe. Or they'll put a permanent exclusion on just the condition, or maybe I've seen 6 month or 1 year or 2 year moratoriums where the condition isn't covered in that time, but with updated medical results showing a favorable change, it can be included in the coverage. I've seen a separate lifetime deductible. Maybe the client chooses they want a $1,000 deductible per year, but that condition has a $10,000 lifetime deductible. That just means that any medical expenses related to that condition in particular go to that lifetime deductible. And once it's met, the policy is covered like normal in the coverage for the rest of their lives. They don't have to meet the annual deductible for anything in relation to that condition. And I've also seen, it's rarely I've seen them charge an extra premium or something like that because of a condition. It happens, but not rarely. The price is mostly based on the deductible that people want, which you can go as low as $250 per person per year, and as high as $5,000 or $10,000 per person per year. That changes it a lot. Also, age obviously changes it a lot. 64 and below, the policies are usually not too bad. People are pretty surprised, especially people in the U.S., at how inexpensive they are compared to the U.S. policies. Once you hit 65 and over, 65 to 75, 76, they're a little bit more expensive, but still way less than what it would be in the U.S. And then some of the companies offer, you can include the U.S. if you want it for an optional cost, and that obviously increases the premium for people that want that as well. So basically deductible, age, and whether or not you want the U.S.
Okay, so I have a listener, Marilyn, and Marilyn says that they have good medical insurance at home. They live up in the States. I think she's up in the States. She says that, is it possible for someone over 74 with a pre-existing heart problem to even consider moving to Mexico and getting affordable medical insurance there?
Well, pre-existing conditions for the annual, well, first off, if she has good healthcare in the U.S. or in Canada and she wants to keep that and use that primarily, the medical evacuation plans, because they don't provide any coverage for medical expenses, they just provide the flight and everything, they're really lenient and accepting of people with pre-existing conditions. Okay. If you get accepted with it, there's just a 90-day waiting period, and after that, every condition is covered. So she would have coverage for that to get flown back home. She just wouldn't have coverage for any of the stabilization expenses in Mexico. if she wanted coverage for that, or just to have an annual renewable policy, if she planned on living in Mexico full time or for a majority of the year, then all of those private companies, they take the pre-existing conditions on a case-by-case basis. So it's really hard for me to say it would depend on what the heart condition is exactly, how severe it is. They would definitely ask her to go get some tests and meet with a doctor and fill out some forms. The good thing is that if she's determining whether or not to move down to Mexico because of that, or mainly because of that, we can submit applications and go through that process and take care of everything while she's up in the US or Canada if she wants. So at least she can know ahead of time, and there's no harm, no foul. The only thing she would be out is if she had to go get the medical test done that the company required and then decided that she didn't want to take out a policy with them, or they denied her or whatever. But I'm always willing to try with people. I've tried with people with very, very severe pre-existing conditions, and sometimes you're surprised. And also, I recommend that we submit applications to just more than one company instead of just maybe the preferable company that the person would want, and we see which company comes back with the more favorable acceptance terms, and we decide from there. I've submitted policies for clients through all 4 or 5 of the different companies that I work with so that we can see what would be the best terms.
Cool. All right. So Marilyn, there is a chance for you, and you can get a hold of Michael. We'll get the contact information for him so that you can find out for yourself. That's great. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about people who are going to be living full time. You touched just a little bit about full timers in Puerto Vallarta, people who are going to be living there. What kind of supplemental coverage is offered to someone? Basically, it sounds like we've already covered that, or maybe not. But for someone who's on Medicare in the States, is there such coverage?
Yeah, well, for people with Medicare, like I said, less than 6 months, I would recommend a small travel insurance policy. Like I said, the no deductible, $30,000 in coverage, $53 per month per person to cover your stabilization expenses, and then the medical evacuation plan to get you back home. More than 6 months per year, I would recommend just an annual private insurance policy that will cover you in Mexico for everything that you want. The sum insured for those are $1 million, $3 million, $5 million US dollars, so you can have your pick and you can get as much coverage as you need in Mexico. And then some people, if they want it, because they like having the option to be able to go back to the US if they want, they add the medical evacuation plan on top of the annual private insurance policy, but that's optional. It's not as beneficial as doing it with the short-term travel policy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this private insurance, the private hospitals in Mexico. How would you compare them with the hospitals and doctors in the States or in Canada?
They're very good. The private facilities, especially in the main tourist areas or the main places where foreigners are, Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, Los Cabos, all those areas, Mérida, Guadalajara, extremely, extremely good. The difference is that, well, and actually this is what I heard. Luckily, I don't need to go to the hospital that much. I've only been to see the doctor once in Playa del Carmen. But just that, besides having really top-notch and good technology and good facilities, that the doctors care more. They're not in such a rush to get you in and out and just write you a prescription. They actually talk to you, listen to you, hear your problems, want to find a more long-term solution for you, not a prescription drug if possible. They'll talk to you about other options. They're very good. They're very good. And the other thing on top of that also is, people, even me, before I moved down here, I was under the impression, Mexico is so cheap. Everything is so inexpensive in Mexico, and it's not. And one of those things is the healthcare. It's not in the private facilities. It's not as expensive as people think. Obviously, it's a great deal more affordable than costs in the U.S., but people who think that they can pay out of pocket at private facilities for major medical emergencies are in for a very rude awakening should they ever actually need to, because it can get pretty pricey in those tourist areas like Puerto Vallarta. And in Puerto Vallarta, you have a great resource there. Her name's Pamela Thompson, and every expat city in Mexico should have a Pamela Thompson because she can really help people with their medical needs and everything. So she knows all the doctors and
Yeah, well, we love Pamela, and actually, we have an episode with Pamela, and we talked a little bit about, we talked a lot about travelers insurance with her, and that's really one of the reasons I reached out to you because I wanted to talk to someone who was an expert in that. But yeah, she's incredible. What she does there, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right, so do you offer automobile insurance?
Yeah, we do it all, and your very first question was, what type of insurance is good for people coming down for a couple weeks, a couple months? Obviously, the travel insurance is one, but I'd also wanted to mention the foreign plated auto insurance. I know a lot of people drive, even their RVs, we can do for them coming down from Canada or the US for however long they need it, at very good prices, everything in English. And also, as well, if they have a Mexican plated car down here, we can do that as well.
Okay. So is it different than what you get in the States? I mean, how does it work, or what are the costs?
Yeah, no, not really. You get, there's full coverage. Well, there's the basic coverage, which is just third-party liability, so bodily injury and property damage done to people and property outside of the insured vehicle. Legal assistance, roadside assistance, and occupant medical expenses. So medical expense coverage for the driver and any occupants inside the insured vehicle. That's the liability or the basic coverage. Then there's the limited coverage, which is all of that plus theft of the insured vehicle. And then there is the full coverage, which is all of that plus damages to the insured vehicle. So it's pretty similar to what people are used to in the U.S. You can also add on certain different coverages. There's a full coverage plus package for foreign plated vehicles, which will cover vandalism, and it'll give you an uninsured motorist deductible waiver, which is always good because a lot of Mexicans don't drive with any insurance. The deductibles for the foreign plated auto insurance are fixed values, usually $500 for damages and $1,000 for theft. The prices, it really depends. It depends on the value of the vehicle that the client gives. It depends. A lot of people only go to the border states, Bajas, Sinaloa, Sonora, like that. If they're only going to the limited territory, we can give them a discount for not driving all the way into Mexico. The different liability, you have an option for $150,000 in liability and $300,000 in liability, and that change there, going to the $300,000 does do quite a bit, maybe $75 to $100 increase in the cost of the policy. But, and also obviously for the term, the 6-month and the 1-year terms are the cheapest, even for people who want 90 days, 60 days coverage. I usually recommend the 6-month term because it's less than the 90 days or 60 days coverage. But yeah, for a vehicle, I don't know, $12,000. I just did one this morning for $12,000. Let me pull it up. I think it was with the $150,000, 6 months, $150,000 liability, $12,000 vehicle was $204 in premium for the 6 months. And for the $300,000 in liability, it was $327. So it increased it about $100. And obviously, I guess some people, they give a vehicle value of $25,000, $30,000, brand new vehicle. So that obviously, I've seen the insurance policies get as high as $800, $900, $700. And the foreign plated vehicle policies, those will always be more expensive than the Mexican plated vehicle policies. Those are usually, the Mexican ones are usually about half. Between 4,000 and 8,000 or 9,000 pesos is the average Mexican plated automobile insurance policy.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, what other types of insurance policies do you offer other than what we've talked about? Any others?
Yeah, we do property insurance policies, so homeowners, renters, condo unit insurance, rental properties if people have bought a condo unit or home that they rent on Airbnb or they rent long-term.
Okay.
Along those lines, we do HOA, homeowner policies for condo complexes, hotel policies, any different commercial, professional liability. We have I have expat clients that own restaurants and property management companies, real estate companies, boat, fishing, scuba diving, snorkeling, tour companies. We can insure boats as well. We insure a lot of boats, especially in the coastal areas where I am, Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, Los Cabos, even down in Huatulco, Manzanillo, Merida. Life, we can do life if people ask for it. It's not really a common question. Basically anything that, if you need insurance in Mexico, just ask me and I will try to find a company that will insure it. So,
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So you've been in the insurance business down there, it sounds like, for just a couple of years, right? You
yeah, going on a little over 5 years now.
Yeah. So you have any good stories that you can tell us that have maybe some happy endings about people with traveling with travel insurance, or usually when they have problems, it's not a good story. I don't know. Got anything?
Yeah,
Got anything
no,
good?
I mean, we've never claim wise, we've never had a problem, thank God. I mean, even I just had a lady a few weeks ago. And this isn't with health insurance or travel insurance, but they took their boat out in the Bay of Banderas and they hit a tree on the way in. And for some reason, it screwed up their whole engine and propel system and everything. And for some reason, she thought the policy that we issued wouldn't cover it. And she mentioned it to me like 2 weeks after it happened. And I told her, well, why didn't you tell me? It'll probably be covered. It's not like it was a mechanical breakdown or something like that. You hit a tree. I was just worried that because of the time and they had went and bought a part and tried to fix it themselves. Sometimes, obviously, everyone knows insurance companies don't want to pay out if they don't have
Right.
to. And that's what we're here to do, is help the client, make them pay out. So, and in the end, it just, like I said, it just happened a couple weeks ago, so we haven't completely resolved it, but they already sent an adjuster out and it seems like they're going to pay out for the claim. But that's a good thing that I would like to mention as well. A lot of people, they have problems with their claims. They have problems with the health insurance provider when they go to the hospital, if they have health insurance or something like that. And that's mainly because they have an agent or a brokerage that didn't explain to them their coverages up front, don't have an in-house claims department to help them with things like that. Especially, if you're getting a Mexican policy through a health insurance policy through AXA, Seguros Monterrey, GNP, something like that, Plan Seguro, everything is going to be in Spanish. The claim center, everything that you do, all your paperwork is going to be in Spanish. And if you don't have a brokerage or an agent that helps with that, it's a nightmare, really. I have many horror stories, unfortunately, not with my brokerage, and also you have to make sure there's a lot of expats that come down here and they're retired, but then they get a lot of friends asking them for insurance or something, and they start selling insurance. And without a legal Mexican insurance agent license, technically those policies aren't valid. And if the company ever found out, they wouldn't have to pay out for a claim or anything like that. Or you get U.S. agents with their U.S. insurance license selling international policies out of the U.S., out of their offices in, I don't know, California, Arizona, Texas, whatever. And those guys also don't have a legal or physical presence in Mexico. So although the policies are legal because they're U.S. policies being sold in the U.S. and not on Mexican soil, still not having a presence in Mexico to deal directly with the hospitals or the facilities for the clients, or to talk with the insurance providers and adjusters and things like that. It really is, the clients are at a disadvantage. So I see a lot on Facebook and things like that. People talk really bad about the health insurance company that they have. Even some of the companies that I offer and work with, I've seen been trashed in some Facebook posts and stuff like that. And usually my first question is, well, who's your brokerage? Who's your agent? Because it's not my experience that company is bad. I have a very good claims reputation and payout percentage with them and everything. It's usually the agent or the brokerage that's at fault, or unfortunately the client that's at fault in their way of thinking because they weren't properly explained things to begin with. So it's more than just cost. A lot of people weigh cost as the most important thing, and you should always weigh cost versus benefits and coverage. But also it's not just about the policy you get and the company you're getting it through. It's Did you get that directly through the company so you have no one to fight on your behalf and work with you in a claim? Did you get that with a Mexican agent or brokerage they don't have an in-house claims department, so they're not going to help you through your claim? Did you get a legal policy that was sold with someone with a Mexican insurance license? It's just all things that I don't think people really think about because they're so focused on the cost,
Exactly. And this is exactly what Pamela Thompson was talking about when I asked her the question about the insurance policies. And her answer was, an insurance policy is only as good as the person who is selling the policy to you. And so,
Right.
and so this is exactly what we're talking about. And it's a good reason to use Michael Keller, it sounds to me. So there, how do you like that? So you said you had a couple of horror stories. You got anything for me?
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is something else too. A lot of people, when they're judging the policies that they're going to get and comparing and thinking of cost, I get a lot of questions about the Mexican government provided policies, the IMSS and the Seguro Popular, which the Seguro Popular is completely free. And I don't know if you talked to Pamela about this as well, but she is as adamant as me about it. We completely agree on this as well. But Seguro Popular, I don't know that much about it because they're government, so I don't offer them. But I think that one's free. The IMSS is like $300 or $500 a year, so obviously way less expensive than the private policies. But in the end, you get what you pay for. You go to that facility, and no one's going to speak in English. They take people on a first-come, first-served basis, not based on severity, so you could be sitting there with something major for a while. They're very understaffed and overcrowded. Basically, it was meant for the underemployed or unemployed Mexicans in Mexico. It wasn't really made for foreigners. There's no private rooms. You always will be sharing a room. If there's no rooms, you'll get a cot in a hall. The horror story leading to this is that I just talked with a woman the other day. She was riding her bike and in the rain, and there was a big open sewage drain or something, and she had fallen into it and really went head over heels. She's 68 years old, had really, really injured herself, didn't have any private insurance or anything. That's why we were meeting, because after this, she had decided that it was time to get it, which is unfortunately the case with a lot of people. They wait until something bad had happened there. But so she went, the ambulance took her to IMSS. There were no rooms, so she had to stretch her in the hall. And because she was laying in a sewage drain with the rain falling on her for however long, a few minutes, whatever, before the ambulance came, her clothes were all smelly and wet and everything. So the hospital staff took all her clothes off her and left her lying on the stretcher completely naked out in the hall while everyone was walking by for, she said like 30 minutes to an hour until someone came and put an old smelly musty blanket on top of her, she said. So it wasn't even like it was much better. And I mean, and that's not even the most extremely intense case that I have heard, but just to see her look at me and say that was so humiliating, and just to look on her face of this poor 68-year-old woman who was in Mexico alone that had to go through that, it just, my heart really broke for her, and I hate to see that happen to people, but unfortunately that's how it is when you base what you purchase just solely based on cost. I mean, imagine a USA DMV basically with your healthcare insurance in Mexico. I mean, that's how it is there. Those people don't get paid enough. They're way too overworked and understaffed. So
yeah, and as Pamela pointed out, that's for the Mexicans. All right,
right.
That system was made for people in Mexico. I mean, so we shouldn't be using that system if at all possible. That's reserved for them.
Right, and I mean, just really quick, and I mean, it is reserved for them. One of those, I think it's IMSS. They do accept people with pre-existing conditions or of any age. So when I get clients that are 85 and hadn't gotten the policy with me before, or they have something really major, obviously in the end, something is better than nothing. But yeah, if you do not have a major pre-existing condition and you're under the age of 76, you shouldn't even be looking into those. Those aren't for you. Those are for the Mexicans. That's like the Mexicans coming up to the U.S. and taking welfare away from people or something,
Right, exactly. So that's that. I'm very glad that you talked about that. And yeah, that's a horror story, man. All right, so nobody wants that to happen to them. So just remember, be prepared.
Hmm.
All right, so hey, how do you like life in Playa del Carmen?
Now I like it. When I first moved out here, I wanted to get back to Puerto Vallarta so bad. Being from Chicago, it's completely flat there, and it's also completely flat here.
Mm,
And I really, really like the mountains in Vallarta. I really like the drive from Vallarta to Guadalajara. I also really liked Guadalajara. I would actually prefer to live there if
really?
possible.
Wow.
Yeah, I really liked it in Guadalajara. It's hotter here in Playa del Carmen significantly. It's just you can feel the sun on you. It's pretty bad. But having said that, there's more things to do here.
Is there?
Yeah, the Mayan ruins, the Great Mayan Reef that's out here. You can snorkel, all the scuba diving, the cenotes, Chichen Itza up by Merida. There's this really nice lagoon called Muyil where you can go floating through all these mangroves.
Oh,
Down further south, there's Bacalar. It's a big clearwater lake right off the ocean and everything. So it's just, I don't know. To me, it's more of a city-ish atmosphere than Vallarta's kind of like a small town in that little cove, in the bay there.
yeah. Oh wow. All right. Well, we miss you in Puerto Vallarta. We wouldn't mind having you back. Um,
Yeah, I've thought about it. Maybe in the future.
um, Michael, you've been so helpful. Tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you. How can they find you on the web?
Yeah, our website is guardianinsurancemx.com. You can just search Guardian Insurance Mexico. It should come up. We're on Facebook as Guardian Insurance Mexico. You can also message me directly on Facebook, Michael Keller. I deal with a lot of clients on Facebook. My email is keller.m@guardianinsurancemx.com. I would give you the phone numbers, but there's so many to call from the U.S. or Canada, to call from Mexico.
Well, that's okay. I'll have those in my show notes.
You can just get on our website
Yeah.
and they can see it all there.
Okay.
We have offices in Puerto Vallarta and Playa del Carmen, so you're always welcome to physically stop by either of our offices. Within the next 6 months to a year, we plan to have offices in Merida, San Miguel, Mazatlan, and Los Cabos. So we hope to be expanding soon and being able to help everyone in all the different expat cities. So.
All right. Attaboy. Look at you, man. Go for it. All right. Is there anything that I'm missing? Did I miss anything in our discussion that maybe you wanted to add before we say goodbye today?
No, I think we really covered a lot. Just really, people should realize that they can take care of these things or ask their questions or look into this stuff from up in Canada or the U.S. You don't need to be down here. We can help you electronically by the phone. Do your research. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm always here to have and happy to answer anything, to speak over the phone, whatever people need. It's not as scary as people think. And if insurance is one of the main reasons you're hesitating coming down, it shouldn't be, because we're here and we're more than capable and happy to help people. So.
All right. Well, Michael Keller, Guardian Insurance. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Barry, for having me. It was a good time. It was very nice. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope that you have a better understanding of Mexican insurance policies and why you really need a good broker and a good agent should you ever need to file a claim while you're in paradise. The importance of having traveler's insurance, the importance of just being covered in case the unmentionable might end up happening to you, right? So take this all to heart. Do the right thing, you guys. And that should do it for this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. Now, next week, I'm going to have a special couple of travelers here. They are listeners, David and Lucia Garcia from Miami, Florida. And they're going to talk about traveling with their 2 young daughters in Puerto Vallarta. And we're going to find out what it's like to travel in paradise with your kids next week. So stay tuned for that show. And until then, remember that this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com, that's JR's website, and reserve your tour right through him, right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. JR's experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying, thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you're going to be using someone else to do it. So really, just do it. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget that JR has maps on his website there, as well as DIY tours. He's got his revitalized happy hour board. I have links to all of those in the show notes of this episode of Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. And now, once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe. Give me a good review on iTunes if you would. That way we can get more and more people to find out more about this wonderful place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember that I made it easy for you to do that with each episode that I create. And if you haven't been to my website, you need to go there and have a look. I have the links to all the places that we talk about. I have pictures and more right there in the blog post, show notes for each episode that I create for each and every show. So if you haven't been there, check it out, really, okay? All right then. So thanks again to Michael Keller of Guardian Insurance, Mexico. Check out his contact information in the show notes of this episode of the show at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler signing off with a wish for you to slow down, be kind, and live Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
De Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino eterno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta.